So building on that theme of aligning genetics with real world goals, we're going to move now into an area where many producers are reassessing their priorities, how to increase protein while maintaining or strategically lowering fat, all in response to the new processor incentives. So to unpack what this means at the farm level and how genetics can support the shift, Paul is going to be joined by Amanda Bega for our next segment. So Paul, I'll let you go ahead and take the lead.
And apologies, Amanda, I'm not going to be looking directly at you because I think I got to point this way in order for the speaker to pick up what I'm saying. But yeah, Amanda, we've had a lot of communication from provincial milk boards this fall, making clear that processors are needing more protein, and they're actually incentivizing that to happen by putting a greater percentage of the value in a liter of milk from the protein side and a little less on the fat side. So can you summarize for us maybe what the payment changes are in case anyone on the call has missed out on some of that information?
I will. So yes, they have been talking for a little bit about that, and finally the change take effect now in next February 1st. It's important to notice that it's going to be in effect for all 4 provinces. So everyone's going to have the changes, and now we're going to have lower emphasis on fat, and we're going to move from 85 to 70% on fat for the payment and 10% to 25 on protein. And we're going to also be still the same for the total solids, like 5%.
And then in terms of what's being communicated to farmers as the perfect level for fat percent, protein percent, or if there is such a thing, but in the milk that's being shipped, would you say there's a sweet spot in terms of where producers or what producers should be targeting?
It's hard to say that it's like a perfect spot for everyone, but everyone needs to be looking at their own numbers, I believe. And then it's just easy to say lower the fat and increase the protein, but it's hard to do in a short term. So we keep the cow's health, and it's a thing that we need to be thinking about the production as well, nutrition and protection of the health of the animals. And the processors want to see more volume, so that could be accomplished if we fill up the quota, collecting our 5% lower on fat percentage because of the change of the payments. So in real terms, I would say that fat percentage would be 4.3 from 4.3. That's the provincial average right now. And then we jump to 4.13. So that could be like a sweet spot. And the protein percentage average right now for the province, it is 3.2. So we could increase that for 3.5, and that would bring us for a good price on the milk.
Sure, there'll be a lot of farmers that would love to be there now, and that obviously is not so easy to do. But lots of producers certainly are above 4.13 right now for fat, and I'm sure there's lots of farmers that are below the 3.5 for protein. What would you say they should do in the short term and longer term to get ready for changes that are coming?
So in the short term, I think it would be probably thinking about reducing a little bit of the nutrition if it's possible, but we can also not consider like changing and removing the fat completely. We need the fat for the health of the animals. And in short term, it's hard, but it's like in a long term, short term, I would say that it's like changing the breeding program. It's a strategy now that we need to be putting emphasis on. And then after, the main thing to say is that we need to start immediately to create the strategy, and then picking the cows that are higher for protein in the herd. It's also another, for breeding the replacements is another strategy, because not all the young animals are the highest ones for protein. So for example, we have herds that are genomically tested, then we see that older cows does have the higher percentage and higher concentration of protein as well. So those animals could be a good possibility of creating replacements out of.
So a really good point. Obviously, we think of, as an AI company, we naturally think of the sire usage, but in reality, there's a lot of variation in the herd level. Yeah, with the protein within the herds. And for sure, there's some, for most traits that we've been including in our selection goal for lots of years, you'd expect that your youngest animals are the highest. But when it's a trait that's new and suddenly focusing on it, that like protein, you might find that it's not in the youngest animals that you have your best ones. But I guess we have some producers that are thinking that the majority of emphasis for the coming years needs to be on kilograms protein and de-emphasizing fat maybe more than you might even think. Do you have producers doing that right now? Do you have some major shifts in the index selection that farmers are using? And what kind of bulls would you say suddenly come or have become popular because of the shift in focus?
Yes, so first I would say that our breeding program is changing a little bit in the case of creating our own index, like Karen was mentioning about. We are creating our own index, putting a more emphasis on protein and volume, but it not putting completely not putting emphasis completely on fat, for example. So we're still putting a little bit of emphasis on fat, but increasing the protein. And on the sire selection as well, like I would say that we're bringing higher protein bulls for sure. And for example, on the proven side, we do have pragmatic and sugar high, that they are both high for protein concentration, good concentration of fat, and high volume of milk. And for the genomic sires, we have right now Preston, Popeye, Fitness, and Faithful that are as well, like overall, all really high for the genomic boost to production, and they are higher than 3,000 for pro dollar, close to 3,400, and higher like around 4,000 for LPI. So I think they fit all the criteria and a pretty good balance overall for like conformation, not really like hard extremely traits. And as well for like health, I think they bring their positive sides on specifically traits.
When it comes to lowering fat in herds, I mean, obviously there are tools available, fat blockers. You can remove the fat from the ration, as you had mentioned. And we know producers are using those tools, but are there also dangers in changing rations to manage the fat?
So yes, I'm not a nutritionist, but there are dangers for sure when you change the ration like completely to increase the protein level and reduce the amount of fat. So, but some fat because fat is important for the reproduction and the health in general of the animals, right? So there are fat blockers that you can make the cutoff and like forage shorter, but probably other things as well. But the danger is not to do things that affect cow health negatively, like putting them into fat inversion where fat drops very low while protein stays unchanged or goes up. And changing drastically can cause very like high increase on health damage. And then because of less volume of milk as well.
And then final question, I guess, are there any strategies other than genetic selection that can really aid in improving protein percent or even better, the fat to protein ratio? What other strategies do you see farmers using?
Yes, we have mentioned most of them, like genetic and most important, start to right away on the genetic plan. And then some of my herds are genomically testing, so we're putting emphasis on their best protein in the heifers, but not only in the heifers. Like we said, we're like looking at the older animals, and because of creating our own index, we're bringing out of the herd the dams with this amount of protein as well. So overemphasizing like the protein relative to fat, it is one thing. genomic test your animals, and then don't just pick the bulls that helps you go get the right fat and right protein like ratio. But let your female genetics do the job as well. But there are strategies that you can do on the management side that create the high volume of milk, and that can bring a high concentration of protein as well, which it is playing around a little bit with your average days in milk. That's another option.
Actually, a very interesting point, because you do see lots of cows later lactation that
Yeah.
are much higher in protein, aren't they? Higher in fat too, though.
Yes.
But maybe the protein ratio. Maybe we have to do some analysis on that. Thank you, Amanda. That was a really good session. And back to you, Krista.